I am a 36-year-old woman, and if you had asked me a year ago what the word betrayal meant, I would have given you a textbook answer, something about broken trust or dishonesty. But today, I know it in my bones. I know the way betrayal can gut you, the way it can leave you standing in the middle of your own family, suddenly realizing you are a stranger in the home you grew up in. My name is Megan Carter, and this is the story of the night everything came undone. The night my father asked me a question I still hear in my sleep. $200K, what did you do with it? It was supposed to be a celebration. My younger sister Kristen had just turned 30, and my mother insisted we gather at the old family house in Salt Lake City. The place still smelled faintly of lemon polish and roasted herbs the way it always did when Mom hosted. Dad had been quieter these days, moving slower, leaning heavier on the arm of the chair when he stood. But that night he seemed sharper than I'd seen him in months. His eyes followed every move at the table as though he was waiting for something. I remember sitting across from Kristen. She wore a pale blue dress that looked like it belonged on someone else, someone more delicate, less calculating. Her hair was curled perfectly, her lipstick a shade too bright. She laughed a little too loudly at Dad's old stories, leaned too closely to Mom when she whispered. I tried not to feel like an outsider, though I always did when I came back here. Ever since I opened my boutique Carter's Charm on the east side of the city, my mother had treated it like some childish hobby rather than the business I built with my own hands. Kristen, on the other hand, could do no wrong. The evening passed in fragments, clinking glasses, the scrape of forks, the small talk that pretends everything is fine. But then Dad cleared his throat. The sound cut through the chatter, pulling all of us to attention. He placed his glass down slowly with the kind of deliberation that made me uneasy, and turned his gaze directly to me. Megan, he said, his voice low but steady. $200,000. What did you do with it? For a second, I thought I'd misheard. My fork hovered in midair, the room suddenly shrinking. 200,000, I repeated, my voice catching in my throat. What? What are you talking about? The silence that followed was suffocating. Kristen's laughter died instantly. She went pale, so pale I thought she might faint right there at the table. My mother shifted in her chair, her fingers tightening around her napkin, her knuckles white. Dad's eyes never left mine. The trust fund, the one we set aside for you years ago, it's gone. Every cent. And your name is on the withdrawal. I felt the blood drain from my face. My name, my fund, gone. My boutique was modest but steady. I'd never touched the money because I wanted to prove I could make it on my own. That fund had been my safety net, my future if things ever fell apart. I hadn't even thought about it in years. And now, gone. I looked at Kristen. She avoided my eyes, staring down at her plate as though the pattern of the china had suddenly become fascinating. That's when the first crack split through my chest, a horrible realization that twisted my stomach. Dad? I whispered, shaking my head. I swear I didn't touch it. But he didn't look convinced. My mother finally spoke, her voice cool, almost rehearsed. Megan, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Your father has every record. The bank traced it back to you. Her words landed like stones. I wanted to scream, to beg them to believe me, but the room was thick with judgment already. The air smelled of betrayal, heavy and rancid. That's when Kristen's hand trembled as she reached for her glass. Her face, pale and drawn, betrayed something else entirely: guilt. My father noticed. His eyes darted to her, narrowing. And in that split second, I saw the truth flicker across his face. Something was wrong. Something was hidden. My chest tightened as a horrible clarity settled over me. If I hadn't touched the money, and yet my name was on the papers, then someone had gone to great lengths to make me look guilty. Someone who knew exactly how to bury the knife deep in my back. And sitting across from me, refusing to meet my eyes, was the sister I had trusted my whole life. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, as if the walls of that dining room were closing in on me. My father's question still rang in my ears, echoing like a curse. $200,000. What did you do with it? I wanted to shout that I had done nothing, that I was being framed, but the words tangled in my throat. All I could see was Kristen's face, pale, drawn, tight eyes darting anywhere but mine. The silence stretched until Dad's fork scraped against his plate. The sound made me flinch. He turned his gaze to Kristen, his voice sharp like the edge of a knife. Kristen, is there something you need to tell us? Her glass shook in her hand. She opened her mouth, closed it, then forced out a nervous laugh. What, Dad? Why are you looking at me like that? This is about Megan, isn't it? But her tone betrayed her. Too defensive, too quick. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Don't you dare! I said, my voice low but shaking with rage. Don't you dare try to pin this on me, Kristen. I never touched that money. My mother's eyes snapped to me, sharp with irritation, not at Kristen, but at me, as though I were the problem, the troublemaker, the one stirring the pot. Megan, enough, she hissed. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself. I thought I might lose my mind. My chest heaved with the weight of years of being the afterthought, the daughter who stayed behind to help, while Kristen was always pampered, excused, forgiven. And now, $200,000 was gone, and they all wanted to believe it was me, except Dad. His silence was heavy, his eyes fixed on Kristen. Something in his jaw tightened, like he was piecing together a puzzle he hadn't wanted to face. Finally, Kristen slammed her glass down, water spilling over the rim. Fine, she snapped, her voice cracking. Yes, I borrowed it. But it was for all of us, for the family. Megan was never even going to use it. She doesn't need it. She has her boutique, she has everything. Her words sliced through me. Borrowed. $200,000 for the family. The hypocrisy made me want to scream. My father's voice shook low and dangerous. Borrowed. Without asking. Under your sister's name. Do you have any idea what you've done? Tears welled in Kristen's eyes, but I recognized the performance. I had seen it before, the trembling lip, the quivering chin. She had always known how to play the victim, how to twist the room to her advantage. And right on cue, my mother reached for her hand, pulling her close. She did it for good reasons, Mom whispered fiercely, glaring at Dad, and then at me, as if we were the real betrayers here. You don't understand, either of you. Kristen was trying to help us, to help this family survive. Her words made me stumble. Help us survive. What was she talking about? My heart pounded as a sickening realization began to creep in. I turned to my father. His face had gone ashen, his lips pressed tight, his hand gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. Linda, he said quietly, almost brokenly, what did you know? And that's when it happened, the truth I never could have prepared for. My mother's silence stretched, her eyes darting to Kristen, then back to Dad. And suddenly I knew. She knew. She had been part of it all along. The ground shifted beneath me. I grabbed the edge of the chair just to steady myself. My own mother. She had stood by while my sister stole my future, while she signed away my safety net under my name. She had let me sit there confused and cornered while Dad demanded an answer I couldn't give. Mom, I whispered. You knew. She didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together and looked away, as if the wall was suddenly more interesting than my face. In that moment, the betrayal cut deeper than anything Kristen could have done. My sister had taken the money, yes, but my mother had watched. My mother had chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. The room exploded into shouting, then voices overlapping, Dad demanding answers, Kristen crying that it was all for love, Mom insisting that I didn't understand. I stood there numb, like I had slipped out of my own body. The night that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into an unraveling, and I knew as I walked out of that house and into the cool Salt Lake City air that nothing would ever be the same again. I drove aimlessly for hours that night, the city lights blurring through my tears, until I barely recognized the streets I'd grown up on. My hands shook against the steering wheel, my chest tight with rage and grief. How could they, my sister, my own blood, had stolen from me, and my mother, the woman who raised me, had stood by and helped her cover it up? I finally pulled over in front of my boutique Carter's Charm, the little shop I had poured my entire soul into. I sat there for a long time, staring at the gold letters on the glass door illuminated by the flickering streetlight. This place was supposed to be proof to my parents, to Kristen, to myself, that I could stand on my own. Every rack of clothing, every display, every late-night counting receipts was mine. And now, despite all of it, they had stolen what wasn't theirs and tried to destroy me in the process. The next morning, I woke up on the couch in my office, stiff and exhausted. The memories of the night before hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't pretend it never happened like my mother wanted. If I did, they'd get away with everything, and I'd be left branded as the thief, the irresponsible daughter who squandered her inheritance. So I started digging. I went to the bank first. The clerk pulled up the transactions with a sympathetic look, sliding the papers across the desk. There it was in black and white. My name, my signature, withdrawal slips I had never seen before. My stomach twisted as I traced the handwriting. It was mine, but it wasn't mine. A perfect forgery. I remembered something then. Kristen had worked for a notary office for a while, years ago, before she left, in some cloud of scandal no one ever explained. She knew how signatures worked, how to copy, how to make things look official. With trembling hands, I made copies of everything. Bank statements, withdrawal slips, account history. I tucked them into a folder, each page burning in my grip like fuel for a fire I hadn't yet started. But it wasn't enough. If I wanted the truth out, I needed more. Over the next few weeks, I began piecing together a picture I never wanted to see. Kristen wasn't just reckless, she was drowning in debt. Credit cards, maxed out payday loans stacked one after the other, a trail of unpaid bills stretching behind her like smoke. And my mother had known. She had covered for her, making quiet payments here and there, pretending it was for groceries or house repairs. But $200,000 was too big to hide, so they had taken it from me. I wanted to confront them immediately, but something in me held back. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was strategy. For the first time in my life, I realized I had power not over them, but over the truth. And if I moved too soon, they'd bury it again. I had to wait. Meanwhile, Dad had grown distant. He called me once late at night, his voice softer than I remembered. "Meg," he said, "I don't know what's going on anymore. I thought I knew your mother. I thought I knew Kristen. But now—" He trailed off, his breath heavy. "I believe you. I just don't know how to fix it." Tears stung my eyes as I gripped the phone. "Dad, just don't let them twist it. Please. Don't let them make me the villain." There was a pause. Then he whispered, "I won't." That call kept me going. For once, I felt like someone in that house still saw me, still believed I wasn't the liar they painted me to be. But things escalated faster than I expected. A week later, I walked into the boutique and found an envelope slipped under the door. No name, no return address. Just one sheet of paper inside a photocopy of a loan document with Kristen's name on it and my mother's signature as guarantor. The amount exactly $200,000. I sank into my chair, my hands trembling as I held the evidence. They hadn't just stolen from me, they had gambled with my future to bail Kristen out of her own mess. And now the debt collectors were circling. It all made sense then. Mom's frantic defense, Kristen's pale face, the desperate claim that it was for the family. They hadn't done it for us. They had done it to cover Kristen's mistakes, to keep her reputation intact, while mine was left to burn. That night, I knew there was no going back. My family wasn't just fractured, it was poisoned. And if I wanted my life back, I had to be willing to rip open every secret they had tried so hard to bury. The envelope with that loan document became my lifeline. I stared at it for hours, my pulse racing every time I thought about what it meant. My mother had knowingly signed herself into this mess with Kristen, then turned around and let me carry the blame. I thought of Dad, his pale, weary face at the dinner table, the way his voice shook when he asked me the question that started it all. I realized something that chilled me to the core he hadn't known. My own mother had lied to him too. I decided I wasn't going to confront them empty-handed again. I needed more than anger. I needed proof they couldn't dismiss or spin. So I went quiet. I smiled politely when Kristen sent me casual texts pretending nothing had happened. I kept my voice even when Mom called to guilt me about tearing this family apart. And all the while, I built my case. I dug deeper into Kristen's trail of debt. I visited the courthouse to pull records of civil claims. I even hired a friend of a friend, an investigator who specialized in financial fraud. He wasn't cheap, but when he slid a folder across the table 2 weeks later, my breath caught. Inside were pages of forged checks, fake signatures, and loan guarantees. Kristen had been using my name for years in small amounts at first, until she worked her way up to the trust fund. And through it all, my mother had covered for her. I thought I was prepared for the anger, but nothing braced me for the grief. It was like a second funeral for the family I thought I had. To know that my mother, the woman who once held me through fevers and school heartbreaks, had chosen lies over me, it broke something in me I don't think will ever heal. But grief soon gave way to resolve. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat anymore. The chance to reveal everything came sooner than expected. Dad called one Sunday afternoon and asked if I could come by the house. We need to talk. All of us. His tone was heavy, tired, but there was steel underneath. When I arrived, Kristen was already there, sitting on the sofa with her arms folded, eyes red, like she had been crying or practicing it. Mom hovered beside her, lips pressed tight, glaring at me as though I had personally dragged the devil into our living room. Dad stood near the fireplace, a folder in his hand. "We're not leaving this room until we get the truth," he said. His voice trembled, but his eyes were sharper than I'd ever seen them. Kristen launched first. "Dad, I told you already I only borrowed it. Megan's blowing this out of proportion. She has her business she doesn't even need." "Stop." Dad's voice cracked like thunder. The word cut her off mid-sentence. He opened his folder and held up the bank slips with my forged signature. "This isn't borrowing. This is fraud." And your mother knew. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom tried to speak, but Dad lifted a hand. "Not a word. I trusted you, Linda. I trusted you both." That was my moment. My hands shook as I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying with me everywhere. I spread the loan documents across the coffee table, the paper trembling under the weight of my fury. "You didn't just steal my future?" I said, my voice low and shaking. "You used my name, my identity, to bail Kristen out of her own debts. Do you even realize what could have happened if the bank came after me? If they pressed charges?" Kristen's face drained of color. Mom's eyes darted between the papers, and Dad desperate for some defense. But for once, her words failed her. Dad sank into his chair, his hands clutching his head. "I can't believe this," he whispered. "All these years, all those sacrifices, and this is what you do to your sister." His voice broke, and the sound of it nearly shattered me. But beneath the pain, I felt something else rise inside me: vindication. For the first time, I wasn't the one being doubted. I wasn't the scapegoat or the liar. The truth was on the table, undeniable. Kristen tried to reach for him, her tears flowing. "Daddy, please. I didn't mean—" "Don't." His voice was cold, final. He looked at me then, his eyes glistening. "Megan, I am so sorry." It should have felt like victory. But as I stood there watching my mother and sister crumble under the truth, I realized it wasn't triumph I felt. It was grief. Grief for the family I had lost long before the money ever disappeared. That night marked the true end of the Carter family as I once knew it. The living room, with its familiar walls and framed photos of birthdays and graduations, became a crime scene of trust. No yelling could fix it. No tears could patch over what had been exposed. My sister sat curled on the couch, her face in her hands sobbing with the same dramatics she'd used all her life to get her way. My mother stood rigid beside her, glaring at me with venom as though I were the one who had betrayed them. But I no longer felt small under her eyes. I felt free. Dad told me quietly that night that he would handle it. He was going to contact the bank, the lawyer, and clear my name officially. He asked if I wanted him to press charges, but I shook my head. It wasn't because they didn't deserve it, they did every bit of it. But I realized the real punishment wasn't mine to deliver. The truth was out, and sometimes that alone is the harshest justice. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was merciless. Kristen's debts came crashing down. Without my name to shield her, the collectors turned on her like wolves. Her friends, many of them who had benefited from her extravagant spending, vanished one by one. I heard whispers she'd sold her car, then her jewelry, just to keep afloat. Mom tried to protect her, but even she couldn't stop the spiral. And in those whispers, I caught something else: shame. Not mine. Theirs. As for me, I poured my energy back into Carter's charm. I expanded the boutique's offerings, took on new suppliers, and threw myself into work the way only a wounded heart can. Each dress I hung, each customer I smiled at, reminded me that I had built something no one could steal. My story wasn't going to be about money lost, but about resilience gained. Still, there were nights when the ache crept in. Nights when I lay awake replaying the look on my mother's face, the choice she made to stand with Kristen instead of me. That wound runs deeper than any bank account. It's the kind of scar you carry forever. I don't know if she'll ever realize the damage she did, or if she'll go to her grave believing she was right. What I do know is this: I stopped waiting for her to choose me. I chose myself. Dad visits me often now. Sometimes he lingers in my boutique, running his hand over the racks of clothing, pride softening his tired eyes. He tells me how sorry he is again and again, as though apologies could stitch back all the years of imbalance. I tell him the same thing each time: it wasn't you who betrayed me. And I mean it. If there's one bond left unbroken, it's ours. The biggest lesson I've learned through all of this is that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people you share a dinner table with, the people who once tucked you into bed at night. And when it does, it doesn't just break your heart, it forces you to decide who you are without them. I am Megan Carter, a 36-year-old woman who once froze at a dinner table when my father asked, $200K, what did you do with it? But I don't freeze anymore. I know who I am. I know what I've survived. And I know that while my sister and mother tried to bury me under their lies, I rose out of it stronger than I ever thought I could. People ask me if I'll ever forgive them. Forgiveness, I've realized, isn't a gift you give to those who wronged you. It's a door you open for yourself so you can finally walk out of the prison their betrayal built. I may never forget what they did, but I won't let it chain me anymore. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you trusted, let my story remind you the truth has a way of rising. And you, broken, bruised, but still standing, are proof that resilience is its own kind of revenge. Thank you for being here with me, for listening to the hardest story I've ever had to tell. If my journey spoke to you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need courage, and subscribe so you won't miss the stories still to come. And if you've faced your own betrayal, leave a comment below. I'd love to know how you found your strength.